Hi, everybody. My name is Alexandra Guerra. I'm a co-founder and director of corporate development at Nori. We're a carbon removal marketplace. Klaus is one of our advisors. And so we have an amazing panel today from three different individuals doing vastly different things, all in the space of carbon removal. And I wish I could see, we could prioritize their videos. There's Diego from Pachama. How are you, Diego? Nicholas, can you turn your video on as well?
My video's on and so is my audio. Can you hear me?
Yeah. If anybody who's not speaking or presenting can turn off their video, that would be helpful as well. Okay. So we have Nicholas Eisenberger from Pure Energy and Ari Gentry, who is Tito's co-founder from Negative. Hey, Ari. I don't see Diego. Hope he was able to join. Hey, Tito, can you follow up with Diego on Slack? And
yeah, we'll do.
Great, thank you. Awesome. So let's get started just to set context for everybody so that they know who we are, where we're coming from, what might be at the top of our heads. Let's start off with Ari and then Nicholas and tell us a little bit about what, who you are, what your business is, like what's the business model, the value proposition, and then the target market, since we're talking right now in this panel about business models in carbon removal. So Ari, why don't you start us off?
Hey, thank you so much. So I'm Ari Gentry and I'm co-founder of Negative, along with my pal Tito, who I've worked with for over the last 10 years. And we are on a mission to spark climate action. So Negative is making bracelets that are made with atmospheric CO2, and we're making them for consumers. So I think we're the outlier in this panel, is that we are there for everyday people who are interested in having something beautiful that starts a conversation and that inspires climate action.
Thank you. Nicholas, tell us a little bit about your company.
Yeah, hi everyone, Nicholas Eisenberger here, Pure Energy Partners based in Connecticut. Great to see everyone. Thanks to Tito and Jason and Alessandra and everyone who put this effort on. It's really terrific. And I was just impressed with the first, hour here, how, if I may say a slightly used term, how woke everybody is in this group around these issues. You do see a great divergence still of opinion out there of people really not getting it. And, I think one of the things that we can do here is to try to help educate people who are newer to the topic. And there's a lot of friendly faces I see in the Zoom and a lot of new people, which is just terrific. So thanks for putting this together. And Ari, I love your bracelets. I have 3 daughters. I want to get some for them. I know they'll love it. So just very quickly, before we get into the conversation here, I have come, a long time investor and entrepreneur in the broader clean tech space. And in the last several years have really zoomed in on carbon removal as my life's mission going forward. And that's a consequence of a number of things, of understanding the importance of climate, and but also just getting engaged really in the trenches, helping to lead the fundraising for the Carbon X Prize. I see my colleague Marcus Extover here on the screen, who leads that effort along with Nikki Batchelor, and then launching something called the Circular Carbon Network together, where we really zooming in on the topic of this conversation, which is how do we get more capital and more commercialization in the circular carbon space. That's another hat I wear. I co-founded something called the CREO Syndicate, which is a family office network of investors with a significant amount of assets who are interested in investing in clean tech, renewables, and environmental opportunities. And I chair the carbon removal committee there. I also am a shareholder and advisor to Global Thermostat, which is one of the leading direct air capture companies, which was co-founded by my father, Peter Eisenberger, one of the physicists that Klaus just mentioned. So on all these fronts, I'm trying to figure out how do we get this ecosystem going? How do we get the gears turning to have successful businesses that can then also address the climate challenge, and feeling that we need to come at it still from a number of those perspectives. So that's why I'm trying to come at it from those angles. And I'm really excited for this discussion about how we get that going.
Thanks, Nicholas. Okay, Diego's here. Diego, we're just doing quick intros. Tell us a little bit about yourself, the company, the value proposition, and the market.
Hi, everyone. My name is Diego. I'm the co-founder of Pachama. Pachama is a technology startup with the mission of unlocking the full potential that forests have as a carbon removal source. As you know, we all know, there's about 1 billion hectares that can be restored as forests, which has the potential of drawing down about 200 gigatons of CO2 from the atmosphere if we were to reforest all that area. In addition to that, we have standing forests today that are enormous carbon sinks that we need to stop deforesting. And what we are doing is trying to unlock the full potential that carbon markets have to finance conservation and restoration. And our approach has been to bring to market the latest remote sensing and artificial intelligence technologies to validate and monitor the carbon capture by forests. Historically, it's been difficult to measure a forest because it requires sending people to the field. It's a lot more difficult to measure the growth of a tree than to measure how much electricity a solar panel generates. So we're trying to bridge that gap and use that enhanced data to increase the credibility, the integrity, and the impact of forest carbon projects, and hopefully drive more capital to help unlock more and more reforestation projects in the decades to come. And we are based in Silicon Valley. We raise venture capital and are following the typical pathway of a Silicon Valley tech startup.
Thanks, guys. Okay, so I have a question. Let's start off a little bit with the obvious. So we have 3 panelists all working with different verticals, and different target customers. So Ari, why don't you tell us a little bit of what is it like to engage everyday consumers, individual consumers, in the carbon negative product that you have, like as you described to me before, the carbon negative consumers of the future. Can you tell us a little bit what's that like and some of the challenges that you are experiencing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people can relate with the situation today where, for instance, everybody here is here because they believe that there are both problems and opportunities, and they're big. Otherwise, we wouldn't be devoting our time to them. So everyday people are like that as well. And if you think about the messaging that we've gotten since we were kids, it's like recycle, reuse, the 3 R's, and I missed the third one. But you get the point. It's like we're told to do these things, and then as adults, we're told, hey, you need to travel less. Or if you're going to travel, you actually need to pay some money for carbon offsets. So you're either telling me to eliminate something that I enjoy from my life, to do less, or to pay more. And so at the end of that, what do you get back? If you're kind of like a logical person and you're altruistic, you get back like the good feelings that you're doing something beneficial for the earth. But it really takes education, and it takes making that personal decision, and it takes behavior change on top of that to actually complete the cycle. And it's pretty painful if altruism is not that rewarding for you. It's just extractive from your life. And people don't do it. On the other side of that, once you are woke, a term I use all the time, Nicholas, it's, for instance, like reading all the recycling guidelines for San Mateo County in which I live. And then I tell all of the people that I live with, hey, you're not supposed to recycle this, you're not supposed to recycle that. And then that's the additional burden of I'm the annoying person. So we want to get past all that. We don't want to tell people what to do, and we don't want to take from their lives. What we're doing is we're benefiting from the beautiful technology of direct air capture to take that atmospheric CO2 and make objects of desire, make things that people really want and they really love. And that is going to create conversations. Hey, what are you wearing? What is that? It's going to make people go to you to spark the conversation about, hey, what do we do next? Why are we wearing this? And that's very different from saying, hey, you shouldn't be driving that car. Hey, you shouldn't be wearing those types of fabrics. You shouldn't be, you shouldn't be, you shouldn't be. Instead, we're trying to shift the entire value proposition. And we started with the bracelet, and you can see the bracelets behind me that I'm covering up. And we want to launch into other product areas as well. And we're letting the consumers be the total guide. So what we're trying to do is double down on listening and hearing people's stories. Like, for instance, I'll share, one of the stories is our customer purchased a bracelet on the Kickstarter, which is how we launched late last year. He's an engineer in his 20s. He's been a lifelong recycler. Sustainability was just like part of his life. Like, he grew up in a community that was very sustainable, but he was shy. He really hated having to tell people, like, this is how I choose to live my life. These are my values. I think they should be your values too. He felt like it was actually getting in the way of his relationships. But he said there was this game changer. He backed this other product a couple of years ago, these cool looking glasses made with ocean plastic. People come up to him all the time and they say, where did you get those glasses? And he uses that as a way to spark a conversation about, oh, thanks for noticing. Like, they're actually made with ocean plastic. That's a cause I really care about. And then he starts putting those seeds of change in people. So that's what we're trying to do at scale and bring a lot of attention to the community as well.
That's great, Ari. Honestly, we at Nori, we're talking all the time about the different segments, and we've talked like, how do we get our podcast listeners like Jason or Tito to get more engaged and pay for carbon removal? And the idea of something that is, like you said, an object of desire that starts the conversation is key for individuals. And so I love that you bring that to the table. And then it sparks in me a question of, what does it look like for businesses? Because you're saying, you're trying to get involved, individuals involved, and like being able to take action without it being annoying or without it being a burden either. And yet a lot of consumers, I think too, there's, a variety of people and what motivates us and what we expect from others. A segment of consumers or individuals that will rely on governments or businesses. So they want to go to a business and say, look, I trust. For example, I just bought new running shoes from Allbirds because they're carbon neutral. And I know, I can see it's, 9 kilograms of carbon to produce these shoes. And so they take care of it by paying for offsets. So that being said, Diego, can you tell us a little bit, what is it like to work with businesses and talk to them about, why they would want to be carbon neutral or pay for the verified forestry credits that you guys provide?
Sure. In our case, one of the issues in the corporate world is that carbon credits, carbon markets sometimes have gained a bad reputation of being greenwashing or being, the easy path as opposed to reducing your own emissions. So in one hand, there is all these corporations that are making these very ambitious and valuable commitments towards carbon neutrality, net zero. But at the same time, there is a fear on corporations of being accused of greenwashing or of taking the easy road, right? So part of the conversation for us and the value that we hope to bring is that if you can provide good data and show, not tell, the impact that you're having on actually removing carbon, the carbon that you have put in the atmosphere. In the case of our approach is, through reforestation and forest conservation that can be validated with remote sensing, with satellite images and strong algorithms that can prove the carbon capture, then is a better way to engage your different stakeholders, right? And a way to show yes, the company is taking the steps to reduce emissions inside of their supply chain. And then for the carbon that has already been put in the atmosphere and that unfortunately for some activities will continue to be the case, then we are removing that carbon, but in a way that is not just a piece of paper of a carbon credit, but it's actually here is the impact that we're having. So for us, it's been understanding what are these concerns, how can we help address those concerns, and how can we, in the other side, help increase the integrity, the accountability, and the impact of forest projects. Forest projects are quite complex. You know, in the case of avoidance of deforestation in places like the Amazon rainforest, we have the problem of illegal deforestation, a government in Brazil right now that unfortunately is not discouraging, but actually encouraging deforestation in the Amazon rainforest. So is a lot of work that needs to be done on the site to protect those forests. In the case of reforestation, we're talking about natural ecosystems that need to be intervened. So the importance on these frameworks is to bring light, to bring visibility to the impact of these projects. And fortunately today we do have this plethora of satellites that are scanning the earth on a daily basis. And we have machine learning algorithms that can analyze that data automatically. So our focus has been understanding what are the problems in the markets and seeing how data and technology can help bridge those gaps so that we can effectively convince corporations and the general public that the right thing to do is to drive funding to remove the carbon that's been put in the atmosphere.
Thank you, Diego. And so there's a difference too. Not only is AIRI or negative marketing to individuals, you're selling a product. Diego and Pachama, you guys are selling a service, and it's nature-based solutions. So we have direct air capture creating a product versus nature-based solutions. And so Nicholas is a great opportunity for you to step in and say, like, what do you see in terms of the opportunities between nature-based carbon removal solutions and direct air capture?
So thank you. You know, I think there's a lot of parallels here in terms of what we're all doing. Eric talked about creating objects of desire, and where I'm focused is really creating objects of desire for investors, right? So those would be companies to invest in and businesses that have, you know, great prospects like the ones that they are pursuing. And so, and those businesses obviously do span the full spectrum from natural solutions to geologic solutions to technological solutions like direct air capture, which I'm obviously a big fan of. You know, one of the ways that we've been going about trying to do that is to try to clarify for the marketplace what's out there, you know, what companies are out there, what deals are out there, what investors are out there, what corporates are out there. So along with partners like Tito and AirMiners, folks at Carbon 180, the folks at University of Michigan, I see Volker Sick here on the Global CO2 Initiative, my colleagues Edward Hill, Samir Rashid, and others at Circular Carbon Network. What we've been doing is putting together a couple of indexes, starting with a company index. We found over 250 companies doing this kind of carbon removal just on an initial pass. And we've gotten a lot of very positive feedback that this has been very helpful for investors and others out there looking, saying, well, is there a there? And if so, what does it look like? How mature are these companies? Where are they located? What pathways are they pursuing? We also put together a deal hub, and we found about $500 million worth of current investment opportunity. You know, companies looking for equity or wanting to get projects stood up that needed capital for. And so again, we've had a bunch of investors really knocking down the door to say, hey, I want access to this. Not everybody's, you know, immediately diving in and employing capital, but people are starting. And certainly as they start to see more depth in terms of quantity and quality in that space, more and more investors are coming in. And to that end, we launched just last month our capital index, which you can find on circularcarbon.org, which is to really highlight who are the investors that are interested in circular carbon solutions. We found over 80 investors representing over $175 billion of assets under management. And of those that responded to our surveys to participate in this index, we found over 70% said that they were interested in carbon removal and 77% interested in carbon tech. So what we're doing is we're trying to translate that expression of interest, if you will, those are just words, into actions. And I think in some ways that's what this whole day is about. And so, the business models that Aries bringing to the table, and in terms of demonstrating traction with consumer interest, the very smart business model that Diego's pursuing in terms of how you bring intelligence, digital intelligence and computer intelligence to the forestry challenges we face. These are the kinds of things that people can just recognize as good businesses. And we're starting to see capital deployed and more investor interest in the space. But, it's come a long way from where it was just a couple of years ago. Even having a carbon removal conversation a few years ago was difficult. I was walking around the halls of Paris in 2015 and it was kind of blank stares. And that's come a long way. But, we still need to really ramp up the amount of capital being deployed and the number of businesses that are successful, because once you have these models of businesses that are successful out there, more and more entrepreneurs want to rush in, more investors will want to rush in, and it'll build momentum from there.
Thank you, Nicholas. And so in prep for this panel, we got a lot of questions collected beforehand, and one of the most common questions, and I think let's just go around with the panel and have everybody take their turn to respond to it, because it's the most common question, which is, what are the opportunities that you see in the carbon removal space? We can start again. Ari, Diego, Nicholas.
Sure. So again, we're listening to what everyday people have to say, and we're hearing that they want more products. So they want more ways to bring kind of symbols of this change into their lives. And if you think about the solutions that are there through direct air capture, through anything that's happening like atmospherically or even in the environment, they're invisible. They're a little bit visible as well, especially in more vulnerable communities. But we're trying to, again, turn that on its head and give people things in their direct and daily lives, and give people a chance to be part of the opportunities moving ahead. So let me actually bring more light to that through another example. One of our first customers, she is a young woman that works for a property development company. And so she saw that there were all of these assets they had, these physical real estate assets, specifically basements of large corporate buildings that could be used to house some of this technology, to house direct air capture. It might not be the most efficient space for it, but this was a woman who wanted to offer what she had to this community and to be plugged in to the opportunity space. And when she saw the negative planter, so the product that was made before the bracelets, also with captured atmospheric carbon, she said, this is the first time I've actually seen what I've been thinking about. She's been reading about it, trying to inform herself, and had been designing opportunities that matched with her commercial experience. And she said, this changed everything. And not only do I see more of the technology, more CO2, I think Stan really brought it to life that we are going to have to find ways to use the CO2 to sequester it, sure, but what if we're sequestering that in our products of the future? And it turns out that that's the vision that our customers have in mind as well. She wanted to represent her beliefs, what she thought was cool, in her products throughout her space. And to her, that was the future. So we're very much behind that, and we're looking to innovate on the materials. Right now we have some process innovation of how we've been able to get the gaseous CO2 into the bracelets. But still, I think we have a long way to come with what materials are actually created from CO2 and how we can use them as better solutions than what we have now. So actually for the Carbon X Prize, Negative was a partner, and we experimented on putting CO2 into yoga mats, into shoes, into tiles, and even like barbells or dumbbells. That's the one. And this is what we would love to keep working on in the future. So here's a call to action for the community. If you're really interested in material innovation, or actually if you already have a carbon-based material that you're interested in turning into a product, we would love to have a conversation with you after this to see about those product category opportunities in the future.
Thanks, Ari. I've got more questions for you, but first I'll let everybody else take a chance at answering that. Diego, what are some of the opportunities you see in this space for carbon removal?
Sure. Of course, in my case, the area that I've been putting more attention is nature-based solutions. I am of the belief that the Earth has an incredible power to self-regulate and has self-regulated climate before. We just need to let it do it, give some space for nature to self-regulate. And in that sense, in addition to growing forest, we need to conserve and restore the oceans. Kelp forest, mangrove forest, coral reefs capture a lot of carbon, and these ecosystems can be restored. And eventually they can be financed also with carbon markets. So I would like to see a lot more action on ocean carbon, what sometimes people call blue carbon. In regenerative agriculture, there's enormous opportunities. You guys at NORI are putting a big focus there. I think there's great opportunities in agroforestry and the ways that we use land in general. I think that we still are using land with the information systems of the 17th century. And today we have, again, plethora of data and satellite images, and we should be, an advanced civilization should be a lot smarter about how do we use our land to produce food, to produce materials, and to run our civilization. If we are to survive climate change and to build a sustainable, stable state civilization, we need to be a lot smarter. So I do think that we should be building information tools to make those decisions. Another area is if we are to make the mechanisms, the carbon market mechanisms work, we need to make it very easy for all type of organizations and individuals to know in almost real time what is their carbon footprint. If you don't know what your carbon footprint is on the entire supply chain of your activities, companies are not going to be able to act. And I'm seeing, a lot of companies that do want to act. As soon as they realize what it takes to know what their carbon footprint is, they get paralyzed by analysis. So I think there's many opportunities there. I also think in carbon markets in particular, which is what we've been putting a lot of work on understanding and trying to see how they can be improved. There are several players on this market. All of these players emerge after the Kyoto Agreement, right in the 90s and early 2000s, where we didn't have many of the technologies that we have today. So each of these players can be, in a way, reimagined, or we can be building tools for them to be more effective, more scalable, more transparent, more efficient. I think that in carbon markets, for example, in forests in particular, today, because of the cost and time and bureaucracy of projects, there aren't that many projects, and we need thousands, tens of thousands of new projects getting started, harnessing technology also to do reforestation. There are some cool startups working on drone seed planting, robots, seedling generation, but we need to be able to deploy those new technologies at scale. And for that, we need new generations of project developers, of reforestation project developers. So I think there is plenty of opportunities in all these ecosystems that are emerging, in which what we need to do is see what are the technologies that other industries, that Silicon Valley is helping unlock, right? Artificial intelligence, remote sensing, cloud computing, robotics, IoT sensors. All these technologies should be put at the service of unlocking all these different ways in which carbon removal can happen. as I said, I'm paying a lot of attention to nature-based solutions, but there are many other areas in which these technologies apply.
That was a great answer, Diego, because you also talked about the challenges to scaling. Nicholas, what about you? What are some of the things that you're seeing?
Well, I'm going to go to something that's very near and dear to my heart, and therefore I may be biased about. But direct air capture, we talked a lot about already today, and it really is a linchpin technology to unlock carbon removal. And I am a huge fan of nature-based solutions as well, of course, because I love nature, and how could you not? But it seems pretty clear we need to supplement with some technological solutions, both in terms of the amount of time we have and the amount of land area and other factors. And so, we've made a lot of progress in bringing the world's attention to this opportunity and need, but it's still not where it needs to be. So, there's still misperceptions about the fundamental inherent cost or limits on cost. You heard Klaus talk about we can go down 10x from Climeworks at 500, global thermostats made, at probably lower than that by a significant amount. But regardless, all of us could get into a zone that's eminently affordable to society, just by scaling up, not that much, into the megaton realm, which we're spending trillions of dollars on things that are truly important. And we can do that here too. We don't need to spend trillions of dollars. We just need to get going. And so there's still fundamental challenges around perceptions of cost, perceptions of energy intensity, perceptions of feasibility around direct air capture. So I'm working with many of you to try to address that. And I would say, let's take all the wokeness here and the clarity that many people who have spoken today have brought to the table around the importance of bringing direct air capture to life into the larger system. It is understandably hard to turn a huge battleship of human civilization. It's a big thing to turn, and yet we need to do it, and we have maybe a decade to do it. And if you think about a decade, to really get to a place where we can start to scale many of these carbon removal technologies, including direct air capture, very, very rapidly, a couple of months is a significant delay. If something, like COVID-19 or whatever, or an investor misses a meeting and decides not to do something, or, something gets delayed, that has the potential to affect the trajectory of the climate of the planet. I mean, that's not a great position to be in, but that's the position that we're in. And so my call to action would be to say, there's still a lot of misperception out there. The cycles between what's really happening at the front line and the enthusiasm that scientists and some investors and some corporate partners are seeing when they're working with the direct air capture companies, Global Thermostat and Climeworks and Carbon Engineering, and is not filtering back quickly enough to a broader audience of people in power to be able to get civilization moving. So I encourage all of you to do whatever you can. If this speaks to you in your daily life and in your work, to pick up your pen, pick up your checkbook, pick up your brain and get engaged. The other thing I'll just say quickly, we are hosting a direct air capture climate mobilization summit later this summer. Tito's helping us. It's not intended to be a mass meeting. It's really people who are very very focused on this subject coming together to say, how do we get from where we are, which is promising some recognition about the importance of this, to where we need to be, which is global scale. And that's going to be in July in Northern California, in Mendocino. If you're interested, contact me and we can have a chat about it. But even if you're not, those are the kinds of things that we're trying to put together, and I encourage you to put together on your own, where you feel like you intersect with this topic to help it go faster.
Thanks. It's actually, you answered a question that someone on Slack had asked, which is, how can we make the carbon capture space more accessible? And you said, we need to bring this back, filter it back to the larger audience. And I still don't think that that's completely clear. We have AirMiners conference, so this is great. And again, thank you guys for putting this together. But your general, the masses of people who are responsible for contributing to carbon emissions, bulk of society, don't really even understand what carbon removal is. And so that the question still remains, like, how do we continue to build traction as a community? Maybe it's just to join more of these AirMiners conferences, and Tito and Kelly and Jason need to keep throwing them. But yeah, what do you guys think?
Ari?
Yes, thank you for that.
Well, I mean, I can go. I just didn't want to.
So it's an important point, and we have to get there, and we have to get there quickly. And so Tito and I have had so many conversations about, like, whatever we've been doing, it hasn't worked. So again, like those messages that we've gotten since a kid, like a lot of us know intellectually, like the things that we should be doing, but we don't have a deep connection to the information, or we again, may not feel the deep connection to nature, which is a problem. It's hard to change. The area that we've decided to focus on is actually appealing to, you could call them vices, or you could call it human nature. Give people things that they want and don't expect them to change all that much. So if we are consumers and we have consumptive behavior, then let's change what they're consuming. Let's give them products. So again, we've just started with this bracelet. We think there's so much more opportunity to create different objects that meet different groups of people's minds and personalities and visions and all of these things. And that's going to require material innovation, and it's going to require it quickly. So it seems that when we're able to connect the entire chain of what people want, what we can actually get people to do, and that it doesn't require that much change, it requires kind of the consumer atmosphere around them to change, perhaps. If we can tie those to business models and to, per this conversation, if we tie that to appropriate business models and to bottom lines that the funders and then the regulators can understand, I think that's how we change the whole conversation and change action up and down the scale. I think we have some early examples with, I don't know if Nicholas is trying to.
Nope, sorry.
Okay. The last point here is, I think we have some precedents that we can look to, like with Tesla emerging as a leader in the electric car space. And you could ask, like, why wasn't Prius the leader there? And Tito actually, told me the story of how people who had money to buy Toyota, the maker of Prius, their most expensive luxury cars, they had started buying Priuses, which were not a luxury car. They cost much less. And they were doing that to signal virtue. And this is another aspect of consumer behavior, is people want to signal things about them. And when they can signal that they're doing something good for the earth, good for the planet, they actually will. But we're seeing that it doesn't have to come through the Prius, which was never that big of a moneymaker for Toyota, because they didn't see that it could be a luxury product, that it could be both good for the environment and a sign of change and an object of desire, of like that extreme luxury desire. And now Tesla has kind of swooped in. So I think it's where you marry like that technological innovation, consumer behavior through virtual signaling, with like something that's just the best in class, like the world's best product. And that's where you're really going to get this like amazing change. But again, we need to do it quickly. So let's get our minds together and create like those awesome business models and incentives that tie back to all of the different stakeholders. And then we've got something.
And for those who are new to the space, because I know we have people who are tuning in who have either been, following Klaus and your dad, Peter, for a while, and those who are completely new to the space and want to learn more. So for the latter group, like, what are the challenges that we're facing? So you're saying, Ari, that there's a huge opportunity to give people the products that they want, carbon negative products. Happened to Klaus, not happened to me. carbon negative products, and yet what's stopping us? Like, do we still need to have, you know, Pure Energy get more investors to invest? Is the cost too high? Like, why aren't we selling more cost-effective carbon negative products?
Maybe I'll just weigh in there quickly. I mean, I think there's a variety of reasons, but one of the things we're trying to work on is how do we frame a more positive vision around this, right? And so it's not just gloom and doom and we need to avoid catastrophe, but actually to not just say, but demonstrate how the world is a better place by addressing this, that the solution to climate change actually creates more economic opportunity, creates more social equity, you know, helps further human development. And so, you know, my father likes to say, you know, Martin Luther King Jr. didn't go around saying, I have a nightmare. He said, I had a dream. And that's what rallied people to the cause. And I think we really need to figure out how to do that. And in the case of direct air capture, we're trying to do that, identify how you can take this problem that causes pollution in the air and turn that into a resource and substitute it for all our fossil carbon. We have a very largely carbon-based economy, whether you're talking about fuels, fertilizers, food, life itself, polymers, chemicals, building materials, carbon fibers, all these things that we use or could use that are based on CO2 or carbon. And we have this huge resource, which is causing us a problem in the air. So if we can take that down cost effectively, embed it in these products. And by the way, everybody in the world has access to air, right? My daughter, I have 3 daughters, and one of them was saying, hey, Dad, this is cool what you're doing, but like, shouldn't we have one in our house? And at first I was saying, you know, oh yeah, that's a nice idea. And then I was like, wait a minute, that's a great idea. Why don't, you know, hey, we just broke a plate. Let's print a plate from air carbon. You know, hey, we want to build an addition, or we need a new wall for this, you know, part of the bathroom. You know, we can make that air carbon. I mean, there's all kinds of things that we can make. And if we get down to that level, everybody can benefit by having this distributed resource. So we're trying to paint that positive vision. We're also trying to bring in new audiences. And I think what you guys are doing here at this AirMiners conference is a great step in the right direction, bringing in new, often younger audiences. And we need to continue to build on that and find additional ways to do that, build out the diversity in every dimension, whether you're talking about age or nation or ethnicity or gender or whatever. We need more people who see their future in this conversation to be at the table. So we're trying to do that and welcome thoughts about how to do that. And then we need a coherent plan, I think, to say, this is how it can all work. If people believe that there's a way of getting from here to there, then they'll start to follow along. So those are some of the ingredients that we're trying to tackle from the direct air capture perspective. Diego, how about you on the more natural side?
Yeah, all really good points. I think that one of the challenges that we have with this crisis is that CO2 is invisible, right? It's a garbage we're throwing out that we don't see, right? I think that even with the ozone layer problem, at least we could imagine a hole in the ozone that we need to cover, right? But with CO2, it's just, you know, something invisible that's going out that we don't see, right? So I think that one of the challenges from a storytelling perspective to bring, you know, really a majority of people to act on this, we have to start finding creative ways to visualize this, you know. And with forests, it's very easy, right? You see the trees, and I can show you a redwood tree and show you, look, carbon, right? But I think that in general, we have to find ways to visualize. For example, I'm gonna share very quickly my screen, if you don't mind. Can I, Alexandra?
Sure. You threw me on the spot. I told Nicholas earlier no, so now I feel like
okay.
I just want to share this, which is, you know, what is a metric ton of carbon, which I use sometimes in presentations, right? Just to say, look, a metric ton of carbon is this size. And by the way, the Amazon rainforest has 200 of these balls per hectare, right? And a hectare is a soccer field, right? So I think that one of the challenges that we all working on this world has to spend some time thinking is not just on on the technical aspects, but on the storytelling aspects. How are we going to tell a story that will connect with lay people on the importance of removing something a garbage that we put into our atmosphere that is changing the climate, right? And so new ways of talking about it, new narratives. It's very easy in these words to just take the narratives, the languages, the ways of talking about the first generation of people who've been thinking about this and just continuing those same terms and those same narratives. But I think we need to be creative and find new ways of talking about the problems and the solutions.
Yes, and you know, it's funny. So one of the questions we have on Slack here is with regard to the pandemic. You know, how are we seeing any difference in the way that people are regarding climate change? And one thing that I have noticed is that a lot of people are saying, "Oh, this is a time for Mother Earth to like heal herself, right? This is a time for rest." And like for humans to get out of the way. And another thing that comes up in these conversations when I'm talking, let's say, with philanthropists who want to fund lots of conservation of land to, you know, protect forests or replant forests is the question of biodiversity. So a theme that's coming up, just listening, and I'm curious what you guys think in the context of this conference being carbon removal and air mining. Are we losing the forest for the trees a little bit? Are we only focused on carbon? And is that the right approach? Should we be thinking more systematically or with more systems thinking about all the other things that are being affected with the carbon imbalance? And this might be not just nature-based solutions with biodiverse reforestation and not just planting the same type of tree, but also within direct air capture.
So just to understand your question, are you saying that you know, we're focusing on carbon, but you know, what about species and what about ecosystems and things? Is that the question?
Yeah, I think one thing that comes up a lot is, you know, especially at Nori, at my Nori, I do sales and business development, and people sometimes push back. And they're like, you know, carbon's not the whole story. And I'm like, of course not. Like, this is why we work with regenerative agriculture and farmers, because there's so many co-benefits. We can help farmers get additional revenues for restoring their soil, which means better water retention, means more food over longer times, like all these things.
Right. So this presents this is a very challenging issue, and so I'll just give a couple quick thoughts. One is that I think on the you know, one way of thinking about that would you say the carbon cycle writ large, which includes species and all living things on Earth, is responsible for everything that we know, right? So it's the blanket which keeps the Earth warm enough, never mind too warm, but just warm enough to sustain life. It's what plants use to, you know, metabolize sugar and create structures that animals can then eat and then exist. You know, there's just everything about the carbon cycle is central to planet Earth as we know it. Nothing about planet, we would not exist without the carbon cycle. So in that sense, that's one way of framing it and saying sort of, okay, it's a backbone for all these other things. And so yes, of course, regenerative agriculture, and yes, of course, species, and yes, of course, ecosystems. On the other hand, I would just say, just to throw the challenge out there, and I don't know how to resolve this because obviously I care about those things in my life. Those are values to me too. But I would say if we all keep on pursuing our little silo, we're never going to get the job done. And so I think, you know, the human conversation writ large is still stuck in half measures. Is still stuck in let's go solar, which I've spent a good part of my career, you know, trying to do, and I'm still, you know, a huge fan of. Obviously, I love renewable energy, but it's not going to get the job done alone, right? We need to figure out this carbon removal challenge, and so we have to think strategically. I mean, Klaus said there's a reason that the direct air capture people have been primarily physicists so far. They're system thinkers by nature. And of course, physicists can have blind spots, right? Physicists don't have all the answers to everything that ails either the Earth or humanity, and I'm not suggesting they do. We know that, you know, pure technocratic solutions to things can lose sight of very important values. But we do need to have, at some level, a bottom line look at what system imbalances we have here and how to fix them. And so I think that does lead you back to things like direct air capture and other biological systemic carbon removal solutions.
Do you have something to add, Diego?
Yeah, no, for sure. I agree. And to me, this is incredibly important. When it comes to forest carbon markets, we are big proponents of having holistic approaches and not just focusing on single-handedly measuring carbon. If we were to do that, we fall into the danger of completely clear-cutting the Amazon rainforest and planting eucalyptus all over the planet. And we don't want to be in a planet like that. So there are ways in which with remote sensing and machine learning, we can measure biodiversity, and we are doing some experiments internally, starting to identify species groups, tree concentrations that are markers of wildlife habitats. And then there are ways in which we can potentially model the role of water on ecosystems. As you guys know, the Amazon rainforest is a source of water flows for other ecosystems, the flying rivers, as they call them, that go and fertilize other ecosystems, meaning that if we take out the Amazon rainforest, we could be desertifying Africa and even Asia, right? So having a holistic approach to ecosystems is incredibly important. And then frankly, another thing is important for us who are specifically on carbon removal is that we're not going to get there just removing carbon. We have to redesign civilization to decarbonize it and to make it more sustainable. And we need to change our lifestyles. We need to change our industries. We need to change the way that we do everything, right? If we are to sustain a civilization for many billions of humans and still tell a story. So I couldn't agree more that we have to be careful of not falling into maximalisms and carbon maximalism, right? And we have to always keep this nonsense in mind.
Yeah, I can build on that. About the changing narratives, I think we want to establish a norm in the marketplace. And in order to establish a norm, first we do have to be carbon forward. We have to use the tools that we have in order to do the best that we can, essentially. So with negative, I don't think I shared this before, but we offset all of the carbon that's emitted through the processes of manufacturing and shipping. And by the way, most of the CO2 is emitted through shipping. So we do a life cycle analysis in order to understand what do we put out there so that we can take it out. And that's how our products are carbon negative. So we want to change the landscape of products to make it the norm that we design with nature in mind, that we think about that whole life cycle, that what we put out, we have to also take out, and we have to do something with that. So that story will eventually, we hope, become embedded in the products that we create, and we hope in so many of products, to the point where carbon is not really part of the conversation anymore. People aren't buying our products because we're talking about them containing carbon. They're buying our products because they love them, like they're awesome. And the narrative has sufficiently changed in the future at that point to where young people, the most young people today, are going to enter a world, we hope 5 and no more than 5, but maybe 10 years from now, where they just expect that they can buy products that have carbon in them, that have the life cycle thought of in the beginning, and that they have the manufacturers and brands have been responsible, and that they've thought of their whole life cycle of products and taken them out. So that's what we have in mind for the long term. And we want to, again, shift that narrative sufficiently so that we're not even carbon forward anymore. We're just products. But again, right now, we're starting with that small audience, and we're trying to build it through brand building. And that's our big challenge right now, is building a consumer brand. So again, it's an appeal to the audience. If you do have experience in consumer brand building, we would love to talk with you.
Okay, we've got 4 more minutes. I'm gonna ask a question that just came in Slack, which is somewhat relevant to what we're talking about in terms of brand building and awareness. Regarding education, Is there, or can there be a central organization that standardizes definitions of things like carbon offsets, carbon credits, etc.? And can we get carbon-focused companies to use these definitions?
I mean, I can jump in. There are some organizations that have been, trying to do this. The World Resource Institute, for example, World Wildlife Foundation, the UN, has a lot of glossaries out there. But I think that we need new thinking as well, right? And this is going to be an instance in which the collective imagination can come together, right, through social networks and through, all these ways in which we can, start building this hive mind that we are, making emerge to come out with the new terms. I don't think that this is something that should be centrally, decided. If anything, we need more decentralization and to let every voice be heard. But I do think that these new terms will start to gain gravity if they make sense. And I think that this is a moment of creativity and of course of high integrity. It's a moment in which we have to make sure that we are always standing for what is more truthful, what is more transparent, what is more clear. That is a role in which technology can help.
Yeah, and if I may, I'd love to add to that because we do similar things here. Mark, to answer your question, there isn't really a central organization that has these standards, and I'm glad that Marcus is talking about the panel later today at 1:15 Pacific to discuss this. And just from my experience, our experience at NORI, we had to, I think, in the fall of last year, put a lot of effort into making the distinction between what carbon avoidance is and carbon removal. And if you look at carbon offsets, the umbrella includes both, but less than 5% of carbon offsets represent carbon that was sequestered and stored. And so making that one simple distinction allows us to have a completely different conversation. Because I would go to conferences like GreenBiz and I would be talking to businesses about, buying carbon removal through regenerative ag projects and NORI's platform. And it was like, well, what's different between that and another offset? And it's like a basic level of understanding is if you don't have the right language to talk about the difference between carbon removal and carbon avoidances, then you're just kind of talking in circles. So that is just sharing my learnings. That is the key distinction that is worth always being super over communicative at the beginning of a conversation when we're talking about paying for carbon credits. Well, I just went up on my little pedestal there and share something at the end, but we're at time. Thank you, Diego and Ari and Nicholas and Tito and everybody for organizing this, and it was an honor to moderate. Have a great day, everybody, and hoping to continue the conversation.
Thank you, Alexandra. Did a great job.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.